Hey, my friend. Welcome back to the channel. This is our September 2024 overview forecast. So in this video, we are going to talk about the transits that are happening this month, including our eclipses, our autumn equinox, and Uranus retrograde. Plus, we'll talk about our new moon, our full moon, as well as our major transits that are happening with Mars, Mercury, and Venus. If you are new here, my friend, hi, Danie C. Muniz here. I am an intuitive astrologer, spiritual counselor, and here to guide you to understand your own inner guidance system. And one of the ways we do that is through the lens of astrology. So, as we go through this, I want you to keep in mind that astrology is something that we get to work with. Astrology is something that we have as a tool. It is not something that is set in stone. And as I talk about the different things, I want you to just intuitively allow yourself to step into how might this affect me? What can I put in place to work with this energy? What areas of my life may I want to work through this with? Also, just to let you know before I share my screen here, we have this on two different locations. So if you're catching this on the YouTube channel, Keeping It Real with Sidereal, you'll be able to see the charts that I show in just a second. And if you're catching this on the podcast, hello, my podcast friend. You can find that over on the Cosmic Mystic podcast. If you just want to hear the audio, and you just want to take me on your walk or your drive or around the house with you, whatever you're doing. So, links to all of that will be down below in the show notes. All right, let's dive into this month's astrology because we have some things to talk about, my friend. All right, let's go ahead and begin. And I just want to do a quick kind of state of the union, as I like to call it, where everybody's hanging out right now. So, as we kick off the month here, we've got our sun still in the energy of Leo. It's about halfway through the Leo zodiac sign. So we've got a couple more weeks here with Leo before we move into Virgo, which we will be doing this month. We've also got Mercury over here. Currently in Cancer. It will be moving into Leo this month. We've also got Mars over here in Gemini. Mars moved into Gemini last month towards the end of the month. And so we're now moving in to that energy. We'll see this energy all the way through September with it in Gemini. Let's see, Jupiter still in Taurus. So Jupiter still does have a few more months here in Taurus. We won't see that shift over until the new year. We've got Uranus retrograde. So we'll talk about that in Taurus. We've got our Chiron over here in Pisces, which is retrograde. We've got Neptune over here in Pisces, which is also retrograde. Saturn still in Aquarius, retrograde. We won't see Saturn move yet until next year out of Aquarius and into Pisces, which, looking forward to that one, my friend. And then we've got Pluto in Capricorn here, also retrograde. And if we come back over here, we've got Venus in Virgo. Venus did move into Virgo last month. She will move out of Virgo and into Libra. And so we'll talk about that as well. All right, let's go ahead and dive into a couple of the things that I want to kick off with. Is always the sun and some of the major transits that we are seeing here with the sun. So the first one I want to talk about here starts on the 2nd, and that is this opposition here to Saturn. So this is going to be with us until about the 13th of the month. So whenever we're talking about Daddy Saturn, who I like to refer to as Daddy Saturn, Daddy Saturn always kind of brings in the rules, brings in the restrictions, kind of brings in a little bit of that hardship energy. And it's allowing us to overcome, well, first to be aware of our limitations, our limiting conditions, our limiting ideas and beliefs, and also giving us the opportunity to overcome these, right? We can't do anything about it if we don't know that it even exists. So it's really coming in here at the beginning of the month to kind of make this bring this into our awareness. And I'll talk about this when I talk about the new moon. But my friend, let's call that in, because we can't make any change in our life unless we are aware that there is a problem. Now, one of the things I will say here is that it may be a little bit harder for you to express yourself. It may be a little bit harder to kind of get going on things simply because you're feeling the limitations, right? So that can bring in some low self-esteem, that can bring in some worry, some doubt, some melancholy. I also like to say there's like this little rain cloud kind of over your head, and it seems to like go everywhere with you. So you want a break here from your burdens and your responsibilities. Like, you don't want to deal with anything anymore because starts to feel overwhelming. So if that is the case, my friend, that is normal, right? That has happened. That is information for us to say, okay, I need to take a break, or something's not in alignment, or there's a limitation that I'm seeing that I am no longer in alignment with. And so what can I do to move through this? So this first half of the month here, we're also going to see a square to Jupiter. And so that's going to come in on the 5th here. So let me show you. And that is right here. You can see that coming in right here. So this energy, Jupiter with the sun, there tends to be more of the energy of like confidence and optimism, where we actually want to overdo it. We're actually trying to do so much, and we actually need to just focus in our energy on just a few projects or just one project. There's the energy of wanting to do a lot here. Because of this opposition, it might feel like everything is overwhelming, like there's all too much, and you're just kind of wanting to like step back and not do anything. Or you go into the overdoing mode where you're doing all the things because you're trying to avoid sitting with the emotion, sitting with the feeling of whatever that limitation is that might be coming up for you. So I'm going to recommend that you look for ways in which you can come to that middle ground and see, am I going on the deep end on either way, right? Am I working so hard to try to avoid the thing, or am I in the thing so much that I'm also not even moving forward? So paying attention to those, because Jupiter can make this a little bit more extreme. Now, the second half of the month, we're going to see a shift here with the Sun and Uranus. So let me come over to the 13th, where we will see that we'll see this fall off. The Saturn here will fall off on the 14th, and Uranus comes in here on the 13th. So we've got Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which are all making these connections over these next few days here. So let's bring in, we've got Uranus here. You see Saturn went away. We've got Neptune coming in here. And then we've got Pluto here. So let's talk about these three, because these three are the outer planets. And anytime these planets, we have transits with these planets, they tend to be more for the collective or the broader perspective of things. And the closer, our closer planets like Mercury, Mars, and Venus, those tend to impact us more quickly and also more intensely. The other ones are kind of more on the bigger picture of things, like the bigger scheme of things. So with Uranus, we've got this trine coming in here that we saw kick off on the 13th, which moves us into this more open-mindedness. Uranus is the rebellion. He is very progressive. And so he wants to invite more adventure and experimentation into our world. So there might be a sense of greater self-awareness and confidence, right? Like, you might have gone through these past couple of weeks of feeling like a little bit more down on yourself, maybe seeing those limitations and really like, wait a minute, something needs to shift, something needs to change. And then we get this energy here as we move into Virgo, because we'll begin to move into Virgo here, as you see on the 16th, where things will start, the energy is going to start moving again. Even though we are in retrograde season, we're still going to see this energy moving a bit. And so this is a good change, a good positive opportunity for you for growth, for change, for bringing fresh energy into your world, into your life. So, doing different things, trying something new, expressing something that is unique to you, and really making new friends or connecting with new environments, new communities, new people. That is that energy that Uranus wants to bring in here. Now, with Neptune, because we see that opposition over here to Neptune, Neptune tends to bring things in that are little like you can't quite see things clearly. You quite don't understand everything. Things are looking a little hazy. And so, this is the time more so with this to go inside. And I say this because we are more susceptible to confusion and deception from the outside world, from the outside perspective. And so, this is why it's really important to come inside during this time to really like center yourself, ground yourself so that you can see through the veil, so to speak. One of the things I say with this particular transit is our defenses can definitely be weakened here. And so we might attract the sneaky, the exploitive, the manipulative type people into our life. And so again, I'm going to caution you to come inside and be very clear about what it is that you desire, what it is that you are stepping into, what it is that you are doing. Clear is kind. Read that in Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, one of my favorite books on leadership. And one of the things that she said is clear is kind. And so in particular, this is more so than anything. We're not leading anybody into anything. We're not pulling the wool over anybody's eye. We're being 100% clear about what it is that we're doing, what it is that we desire, and what it is that we want. So the last thing I'll say with this particular transit is just be mindful of things that are taking you out of reality because of avoidance. So I know that there are things out there, right, that we can do to help us step into a different reality, step into a new awareness in a different state. Meditation being one of those, substances being one of those as well, plant medicine, right? And so I want you to be mindful of those addictions because it can be if we're doing it with intention, right? If we're going to the ayahuasca ceremony, or if we're going to a certain ceremony where we're working with like plant medicine, or we're going into meditation to actually um, step into this awareness where we can get a greater awareness. Perfect. If we're doing it because we're trying to numb or we're trying to avoid, that is where the problem is, right? Even something as simple as, getting lost on social media or getting lost in a video game, right? We're going into another reality, so much so that we're not paying attention to the present. And so it can be really easy to get caught up in drama, to get caught up in other things, to avoid the present, to avoid what is actually wanting you to recognize and be seen. So I want you to keep that in mind as we move through that, because we're going to move through that from the 15th all the way to the 26th of September. It's going to be a good portion as this is coming in, as we're wanting to try something new. But we have this here that is really, I'm really just going to caution you here because there could be some conflicts that come up here. Now, with this trine over here to Pluto, Pluto, whenever we're talking about Pluto, it's a deep experience, right? We're going in, we're diving in. And so this particular transit is very supportive. It's very helpful. And so, because it is a very powerful planet, because it is a very deep planet, you have more of a greater power and influence over others, over your life. And so there's like this really big surge of feeling your personal power here over these 9 days that the sun will be trine Pluto. And that's the 16th all the way through the 27th. So This is a really good time to make an impression on people, whether that's in the work that you do at your job, or even just to yourself, right? You're just this feeling of being confident and powerful. If you're working on stepping more into that, then this is a great time to use those types of affirmations to really bring that energy in and connect in with the version of you, right? That is that. This is also a good time to study the mysteries, astrology, transformation, do transformational work to actually be in it, to actually do it. This is a good time to do that as well, because we'll be in a really good place, especially with that Neptune energy and the Uranus energy. All right. And then the last one I want to talk about, which happens at the very end of the month on the 23rd, and this will go through the very beginning of October, which is Mercury. We start to see Mercury and the Sun come together. They'll be conjunct. And so, whenever we see this conjunction, this happens often throughout the year. This is always a good time for focus. So, focusing on like really focused time in the work that you're doing, really focused time for communication. Like, it tends to be a little bit busier. It tends to be a little bit more social. There's like a lot of plans being made and a lot of interactions with other people. But this is a really good time for focused energy. So, that last week of September, if you're like, oh, I need to really focus on things, I really need to get some things done, this is a great time to do that. All right, let's go ahead and move into our moon, and let's talk about our moon because we've got some things coming up this month with our moon. So I'm going to go back here to the first. And we'll see that on the second here, we have our new moon in Leo. So, our new moon in Leo, we've got one thing that's happening here, and I'm just going to move to this time because you'll see here at noon, we don't see it, but then when I come into later in the day, that's when that opposition with Saturn hits. So this Saturn energy is influencing this new moon. So the new moon in Leo is all about being seen, being heard, being understood. I've been talking about this. I feel like I've just been like saying it over and over and over the past few weeks as we've been in Leo season. Let's be seen, let's be heard, let's be understood. Other people are wanting to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. This new moon in the Leo energy is all about that, all about being seen, being heard, being visible and being understood, right? Wanting the attention, wanting to be in the spotlight, wanting to step out. With this, though, with this Saturn opposition, as I said earlier, it's bringing those limitations, those boundaries, the self imprisonment that we have placed upon ourselves based on our experiences, based on our trauma, based on our wounds, right? There's these limitations that we now have that we've decided upon based on our environment. And so, this particular new moon, I'm inviting those limitations to be shown to me because I cannot do anything about it, my friend, unless I am aware that there is something, that there is a limitation here. And so I'm also going to caution you because we don't just want it to come in crazy and mess up all the things. We want it to come in nice and we want it to come in gentle. We want it to come in easy. We don't want it to be complicated. And so if that is what you are setting your new moon intention around, I invite you to set that intention and do so with ease, with grace, with, the least amount of complication as possible. So we call in what we want, right? And so this we can do that with that. But definitely this is an opportunity for you to see where you might have been restricting yourself in those three ways, especially around leadership, especially around visibility, the creativity and fun. Like, how are we like as adults, right? Like, it's really easy to have fun as a kid, right? That's one of our main objectives, is to have fun. But as adults, that seems to change. And so, how can you have more fun? Where are you limiting yourself with that and limiting yourself with your creativity as well, right? It's really good to imagine. So let's talk about the full moon, as we do have the full moon coming in here on the 17th, which happens to be a partial lunar eclipse. So if we come here, we can see we've got a few things going on. Now, I first just want to say eclipses always come in pairs, which means we'll have the lunar eclipse here on the 17th, and then we're going to have the solar eclipse, which is our annular solar eclipse on October 2nd. So that's usually 2 weeks after we'll see one, we see the other. And so the partial lunar eclipse, just really quick, is when the sun is passing through only part of the Earth's shadow. So just because, like, there's that rotation that we see, right? That the moon moves around the Earth and the sun. And so when this happens, a lunar eclipse is when there is an alignment between the sun, the Earth, and the moon. And it's the Earth shadow on the moon in particular that we're looking at with the lunar eclipse. And in a partial lunar eclipse, it's only a bit of the Earth's shadow. When we have the full lunar eclipse or a full solar eclipse, that's where, right, we get to see the extreme magic. Not to say that eclipses in general aren't very powerful times. Eclipses are a time for us to jump timelines, right? To be able to step onto new paths and enter new portals. And so, this particular uh, lunar eclipse that we have is in Virgo. So let me go ahead and share my screen again and I'll show you. All right, here we go. So we've got a couple of things happening here. Um, we've got the sun in Virgo and we've got the moon over here in Pisces. So our full moon, I say in Virgo because it's a combination of Virgo and Pisces. So with Pisces, we are looking at the ethereal. We are looking at our spiritual connection. We are looking at the bigger idea, the transcendence of the 3D, right? Moving into that 5D. The Virgo energy is very 3D. It's very much how we are being of service to others, how we are moving through our day to day. And so, this particular full moon, with these aspects that I'm seeing here with Pluto, with Uranus, with Jupiter, with Neptune, these are, there's an emphasis here on service to others and our spiritual connection. So, how we are taking that spiritual connection, the downloads that we are receiving, and how we are using them in our world. Because some of us are channelers, right? Some of us are receiving information. We are all channelers. Some of us just are a little bit more aware of it or have awakened to it. And some of us have see it, but we like push it away. We kind of like avoid it, right? Maybe because we're not used to it or we don't know about it. I know that was me for a very long time. But there's this emotional energy that we're seeing here with that Pisces and moon and with Neptune that is really bringing in these revelations or these insights, these downloads around our emotional landscape and our guidance system. And that is our intuitive guidance system. And in order to be able to live from that intuitive guidance system, we have to make sure that we are grounded in the 3D, which is that energy of Virgo, being grounded in the physical and knowing that we can connect to the ethereal. So there's this idea of a lot of people like to live up in the higher chakras, right? Want to be up in the third eye and the crown. And that is great. That's great to be up there, great to be in that energy, to connect to spirit, to receive the messages, to be in that bliss, so to speak. And we also want to make sure that our energy is grounded, that we ground in our lower chakras, our earth chakra, our root chakra, our sacral, and our solar plexus, that we're grounding in there, and that we balance the higher and lower chakras with the heart. And so this piece here, I want you to just keep in mind that this full moon is really asking us to connect to the ethereal, be grounded in the 3D so that we can have the shift and be creative in how we're problem solving, be mindful of the excess in our life, mindful of the unhealthy boundaries, and really making healthy boundaries that come from love, that are coming from heart, that aren't coming from unbalanced or over let me see, overstimulated chakra systems or energy systems, but really coming from a grounded place. And so I'm going to say, like, over this period here, as we move from the full moon in Pisces, with the partial lunar eclipse into the solar eclipse, I'm going to invite you, my friend, to really focus on making sure that you are grounded in the 3D so that you can receive, because both are needed. Both are needed. We want to receive the messages from spirit, from a higher self, from God. We want to be able to bring those down and help us in our day to day, right? We came here to earth for a reason. We came here during this time for a reason, to move through life, to understand, to have this experience. And for many of us, if you're watching this, I'm sure to help raise the consciousness. We can't raise the consciousness, my friend, unless we've done that within ourselves first. So that is what I have to say about our new moon and full moon for this coming month. All right, next, let's dive into our Mars, Mercury, and Venus. Now, before I do that, I want to say Mars, Mercury, and Venus are our inner planets, and there are more personal planets, is often what we will call them in astrology. There are personal planets because they're closer to us. They impact us differently than our outer planets do. So we do have our Mars energy, which is our willpower, our drive, our motivation. And as I mentioned, Mars is in Gemini. Um, so Mars in Gemini is a very active energy, it's a very social energy, communicative energy. So there's lots of communication that wants to happen through this period. And then Mercury, as we saw, it's out of its retrograde, it's in Leo, it will be moving into Virgo. And Mercury is our communication, it's our thinking, it's our processing of information. And so, being in that energy of Leo, it is very much about self, very much about here, very much about what is going on with me. And then, when it moves into Virgo, it's going to shift in how am I being of service? How am I helping others? Like, and that's our thought process as well as how we're communicating. So we might even find that we're communicating more with others. And then Venus is love, beauty, our money. It's the physical, tangible realm. And so with Venus, we have Venus currently in Virgo. She will be moving out of Virgo into Libra, but in Virgo, it's like getting things in order. It's structuring things out. It's making a plan for things. It's really taking the what we learned in Leo, what we created in Leo, and now putting a system and structure behind it. So let's dive into what these three planets are doing for us this. All right, so Mars being that motivation, that drive, that determination energy, let's see where that's going to be. Now, I already said that it's going to be in the energy of Gemini. So let's take a look at some of the transits that we're going to see with Mars this month. We do have a couple that are still going to be lingering from August that I'll point out here in just a second. And then we'll talk about the two new ones that are coming in towards the end of the month. So right here, as we start this month, we have a couple of different aspects. We've got the Mars square Neptune, as well as the Mars sextile Mercury, right? So we can see those two happening here. Now, if we I just needed to move my screen, sorry. If we take a look at this here, we've had these for a bit. So we have this first one, this Neptune square since August 24th, and we'll see this through September 12th, and that's kind of bringing in a little bit of lower energy, bringing in some of that idea of a little bit again, can't quite see clearly, are can get into that suspicion or paranoia, or even jealousy energy. There's a lot of that here as well. And then with the energy of the Mars sextile Mercury, this is where we actually really have some really good manifesting powers here. Let me just say, especially in people and things like events or circumstances, can really help here, as well as a burst of creativity, a little bit more domineering or aggressive in conversation, and even being able to bring in the sense of power into how we're thinking. So this is really bringing in more of the energy around our thoughts and our communication. The two I want to talk about that come in towards the end of the month here, which would be on the 20th. And then on the 30th, which is right at the end, but I want to talk about this one first, which is the trine over here to Saturn. So, Daddy Saturn, as you know, but this is a trine. So, trine tends to support us really nicely. So this is where if you're needing some patience, some discipline, being able to follow through on something here at the end of the month and into October, man, this is going to be some really good energy for that, for really having that strength, that ambition, that perseverance to get things done, to get through hard things, to really have the discipline to do it. So if you were looking at starting something new, this right here would be the transit that I would recommend starting that on, and that's on September 20th. Now, right here at the end of the month, and normally I wouldn't talk about it because it is more on the October side, but we'll start it here since it is coming in here at the end of the month. So something for you to look forward to. And that's an increase in social enjoyment, even connecting with people. There's a really good energy for dating, for those of you that might be dating, or even dating yourself or dating your partner if you guys have been together for a bit. But there's a lot of creativity that comes through with this particular aspect, especially around projects that involve like beauty, or like redecorating, redesigning something. So, like physical spaces, this is a really good energy for that, as well as connecting, like I said, connecting with people, social activities, going out, creative. This is really beautiful. So, we're going to kick off the October month with this energy here. All right, let's move into Mercury, because Mercury is going to be doing some things. So Mercury has come out of retrograde, yay! And as we begin this month here, we can see Mercury is right at the edge of Cancer. So we're coming in right at the edge of Cancer, and Cancer, went back into Cancer in its retrograde period, and so now it's moving forward back into Leo. So when it's in Cancer, there's a lot more loving and caring and nurturing energy. And so there's this forward movement with that. And then when it moves into Leo, it's going to come back to self. And in the way that it's going to be thinking about self, it's going to want to primarily focus on the things that I am doing and how this is affecting me. So there's a little bit more of that me, I type energy that's going to come in right here. Let me show you. On the 4th. So we'll start to see that shift again. So we had a little bit of a break in there with Mercury where it was more nurturing and supportive, but then it's kicking back in, and we're going to see Mercury here in Leo. It's like, wait, what am I saying? In Leo over here until the 23rd, it will move into Virgo. And we can see that's right when it starts to conjunct the sun, as we mentioned earlier. So let's go ahead and look at Mercury and some of the transits that Mercury has going on. So again, we'll see Mercury move into Leo. So as I said, it's thinking, our thinking is also more confidence. There's a little bit more of a self-assurance that happens here, because Leo does hold that energy. Things are big, or we think really big during this time. It's really hard to look at details when Mercury is in Leo. But there's also more of a convincing or persuasiveness or influencing that can happen here more so than normal. And I'm just going to say people are probably not listening as much as maybe they should be or desire to be during this time. All right, let's take a look at our first transit here with Mercury, which is on the 17th. And this one, just realized I'm like scrolled way in and you probably can't see all of this, but let me just make sure. Yeah, it's kind of weird there. But you can see that, there we go. Mercury is in opposition to Saturn. So we've been talking a lot about Saturn. So Saturn's really hitting some of our major planets. It's hit Mercury, it hits the sun, and we'll also see it, I believe, hit Venus as well. So let's talk about this, because whenever we're talking about Daddy Saturn, there is a tendency towards negative thinking, feeling of sadness, depression, low self-esteem, deep thought or serious thought, more of responsibility here. So as we kicked off, right, I said that Leo, it's grand, it's great, but we also come halfway through the month here and things are going to start to shift. This is when Mercury hits that opposition with Saturn and things get more serious. There's more of a pessimistic outlook here, and I would say don't make any major decisions during this time, just because there's just this critical eye on things that you might discount something that is actually probably really good for you, or maybe you're hoping this thing is going to solve all the problem when you're just in a bit of a period. Okay, you're just in that period right now, this transit. So just pay attention to this, because things could feel actually a little bit more heavy. Okay, moving on to Jupiter. We have Jupiter coming in here on the 18th. Was it the 18th? Yep, right here on the 18th. We've got Jupiter coming in here, and Jupiter is much more of an optimistic energy, optimistic planet. With this square here, though, it kind of makes it hard for us to narrow things down, and that can cause a problem of indecision or even procrastination. So it wants to really hone in on, it's like Jupiter loves to see the bigger perspective of things, and Mercury wants to like get into the details of things. And so there's a little bit of a battle here, we're going to say, because it's really hard to narrow down into things because we're wanting to keep it into the bigger picture. Now, most of the time, I'm going to say that that's really great, right? Because a lot of the times we like to get into the doing or into the how, especially those of us that are business owners. We want to get into the how, right? We want to get into, well, how do I do this? What's the tactic? What's the strategy, right? You want to get into the how of doing things. And we forget that we need to be in the being of things too. We need to be in the bigger vision of things. This is one of the reasons why I created Sacred CEO, so that we can get out of the task of the tactile doing in our business and focus on our business. And so this time right here, it might get a little bit sticky because you're wanting to get into the things and it's wanting to pull you out to get the bigger picture. One thing I will say with this transit in particular is we could be over optimistic. We could be overestimating things or exaggerating things or promising too much. So I want you to keep that in mind as we move through that transit, which is only about 5 days. So it's going to come in here on the 18th and it'll move out on the 23rd. All right, the next one we have coming in here on the 21st is Uranus, and we've got Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So I'm going to bring those all in for us. We can see them here. We've got Jupiter still hanging out there, but now we have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, right? Because we had those same planets with our sun. remember we talked about earlier. Well, now they're all going to come here under that influence of Mercury because we have that conjunction here with the sun. So Mercury with Uranus is just going to open our minds to new possibilities, to new ways of thinking. With Neptune, because of the opposition, it's going to cause some confusion, miscommunication. Our perception of reality is kind of clouded. It's kind of hazy. We can't quite see things clearly. So here at the end of the month with that sun and that Mercury, it is going to be a little bit harder to make any big decisions, or I would challenge you to maybe wait until beginning of October to really make any major decisions, at least, because this time it's a little bit hazy. The last thing is that Pluto energy, which we talked about earlier, being a really powerful energy, and this is really powerful mental energy. So being able to focus and get stuck in things is probably the biggest problem here. So obsessiveness can be here, excessive thinking, obsessive thoughts, like excessive research, obsessive, not excessive, well, maybe excessive too, but obsessive research can definitely come into play here. So much so that you block out everything. And it's like you're just laser focused in on something. So if there is something that you're needing to be laser focused on, absolutely, this is the best thing, right? Because you can really hone in that energy and be really focused on what it is that you're wanting to achieve or do. So let's go ahead and shift now into, oh, well, let me tell you a little bit about Mercury in Virgo before we move on to Venus. So when Mercury's in Virgo, definitely our thinking shifts into, and that's right here on the 23rd, where we're shifting into thinking about organizing, setting things up, getting prepared. There's a lot of perfectionism energy with Virgo. So you may even find yourself wanting to perfect things or wanting things to be perfect, which isn't necessarily the best move. So keep that in mind as we move through Mercury. And I'll talk more about that when we get closer to that in the weekly Sidereal Astrology forecasts. All right, let's take a look now at Venus. So let's go back to the beginning of the month because Venus does not start in Libra. Venus starts here in Virgo. So as we talked about earlier, we just want to get things in order. We want to get things kind of getting connecting in with making things kind of come together, kind of fit into like, what does this look like? What is the structure to this thing? What is the system to this thing? Especially around our relationships. So what is our flow? Like, what does this look like? Right. I hate to think of it this way, but that is definitely sometimes that happens in relationships, right? We get into these routines and we get into these rhythms that can kind of be a pattern. And so in some ways, you'll see here, we'll want to shift things. We'll want to change things up just a bit because it might get mundane and it might just get boring, right? And so we can bring a fresh new spin on it. So a couple of things we already see starting off here, and we talked about this one already, was the Mars and Venus square. We've got the opposition over here to Neptune, which started at the end of August. And then we have the trine over here to Pluto. And so this actually is going to fall off and we're going to see it make a square later on in the month. So with this opposition here with Neptune, as I've been saying, because Neptune again, right? We saw it with Mars, we saw it with not the sun, we saw it with Mercury, and now we're seeing it here with Venus. This is a very vulnerable time where we could fall victim to predators, to we may be gullible, not quite seeing things clearly. And so I would caution this first week here of the month, because it does fall off pretty quickly, is just be very careful about the relationships that you are engaging in and how they're serving you or not serving you, or where you might be missing some red flags. But this is also a really good time for deeper work, spiritual work, dream work in particular. All right, let's talk about the trine over here to Jupiter that happens on the 9th. Or not the 9th, probably the 10th. There it is, on the 10th. So on the 10th, we see this trine over here to Jupiter. Again, Jupiter is that optimistic energy, and being that this is a trine, this is good optimistic energy here, lots of socializing here. Venus does rule over money and Jupiter rules over wealth. So investments would be good here. I'm going to say that through the 19th, that's a really good period. After that is when we kind of get into that other energy we were just talking about with the Mercury, where I would say not a good time to make any major decisions, and I would be careful with any investments. Again, I am not a financial advisor in any way. I'm not an accountant to go talk to your people for that. I'm just telling you what the stars are saying. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at, there's an opposition with Chiron that's coming in here on the 12th. There we go. We can see the opposition with Chiron. Now, keep in mind that Chiron is the wounded healer. It's the wounds of the past that are here for us to heal through, for us to work through, for us to have a different relationship with or shift the relationship with it. So because we're talking about Venus here, this tends to be, and this will be from the 11th, the 12th all the way through the 20th, where we're going to see some of the insecurities around relationships, in particular your intimate relationships, and those relationships where you've had the most potential for wounds. So that could be from a parent, in particular, most likely a mother or feminine energy, as well as friendships, particularly women or feminine energy in particular, but it could be, again, anybody. So if there's any unmet needs that you have had, abandonment issue, any wounds around that, those definitely could be rising to the surface. But it also is a really good opportunity for us to work on our relationships and strengthen those relationships, especially as we saw earlier, right, with some of with the Neptune energy, with the Jupiter energy, and now here with Chiron. So let's talk about the last two that are coming in. And we're going to see that square to Pluto that I talked about at the beginning here. We'll see that come in on the 17th here. So we saw earlier that it was making a sextile. No, it was making a trine, and now it's making a square. So the square here comes in on the 17th, and we'll see this through the 27th. Venus here gets really powerful, and any simmering tension, anything that is unresolved, these things are definitely going to arise in the relationship even more. So it's almost as if with this Chiron, it starts to pick at things and starts to open things up. And then when Venus comes in here with Pluto, all hell's going to break loose, especially those deeply buried insecurities around love, around value, around your needs or desires. Those could be coming up. Anything that hasn't been resolved, again, could be coming up. Manipulation, jealousy, possessiveness, those words are very common around Pluto. So some of those could be coming in to play as well. If you are dating, I'd be very, very careful over this period here. And so really that last half of September, because the relationships can be a little bit more violent or obsessive, and probably not, depending on, again, where this falls in your chart in particular, it might not be, you might not be attracting the energy that you're really truly desiring. It might be fun for a bit, let me just say that, but it's not long-term stable energy at all. All right, the last one comes in here on the 30th, and that one is with Saturn. We see this trine over here to Saturn. So again, Saturn, he is much more patient, determined, really coming in with the foundations. And so when we're talking about Venus here with the trine, this is more stable energy. This is more committal energy. This is long-term type energy. So this is really good, stable energy. So here, this would be a good time to come back again. Remember I said there was that period through the 19th, the 11th through the 19th, that was really good for investing. I would also say it's still good for relationship energy. And then after the 27th is, and I would say even pushing it to the 30th is when I would say then we can start looking at relationships, long-term type relationships, investments, foundation stability coming in here after the 30th and in through beginning of October. So I see that because we're going to come up into that energy, and for any of you that may be dating or in relationships, some of this may be coming up. Again, I will give this information to you again in our weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast, so you'll remember to come back here. But I would say there's that period there right towards the end of September where things can get a little haywire. Okay, let's talk about the Uranus retrograde, and then I want to go back and talk about the sun moving into Virgo. So Uranus does go retrograde here on the 2nd. Now, Uranus, as I kind of mentioned earlier, what is one of our outer planets, and it hits us generally more on a collective field than it does on the personal field, but it does still impact us personally. It's just we'll see it take a lot longer to come into existence or fruition, so to speak. We'll see it come in a little bit longer. It'll take more time versus this impacting the collective. So Uranus does go retrograde here on the 2nd, and it will be moving into Aries on the 13th of December. So we're going to see Uranus trucking along. It's going to move back into Aries for just a bit, and then it's going to move back into Taurus, right? So once it goes direct again, and it won't go direct until January 30th. So this is from September 2nd all the way through January 30th, Uranus being retrograde. And so on the 13th, it'll move into Aries. And then on the 30th of January, it will go direct, but it won't come back into Taurus into March. So we're going to see it come back into Aries and then back through to March. That's going to shift things just a little bit because Uranus in Aries is a little bit more forceful energy, where Uranus and Taurus is a little bit more relaxed energy. So I see that because we might see things kind of pick up around the 13th of December through that period, through when it's still in retrograde through January 30th, and then all the way through March. So those first few months of the year of 2025, we may see some unstable, a little bit more aggressive energy as we kick off the year. So even as we're ending December 2024 and moving into January of 2025. So with the retrograde being in the fixed sign of Taurus, this is associated with money, with value, with possessions, like physical, material security. And so there's I would say the reflection that you'd want to do, because a retrograde is all about reflecting, redoing, reevaluating. This would be more on finances, relationships, and our own sense of self-worth. So when I look at Taurus and Uranus in Taurus, we've seen a big shift in money, right? We've seen cryptocurrency come into play. We've seen more digital currency happening and other things wanting to kind of come up while Uranus is here in Taurus, because it's changing, right? Uranus loves to change things up. But on a personal note, it's here to kind of help us look at changing and re-looking at getting a new perspective on how we are managing and working and even our relationship with money and finances, our relationships in general, because Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus does rule over our relationships, plus our sense of self-worth. Taurus is that second house on our natal chart, which really shows us our own self-worth. And so these next, several months here is a really good opportunity for you to look at your own worth and worthiness, how you feel about your sense of self, how you feel about your worthiness in the world. And that immediately comes into, like, the immediate thought is into how we are receiving things. So as we go through this, the retrograde may inspire you to look at, right, to reassess your income spending habits, to look at these types of sources of income that you even have. These days, multiple sources of income are needed, because I learned back in 2008, I was happened to be in the financial institutions at that time. My career was in the financial world in 2008, and I was in California, and there was a huge shift in our market and many people who were struggling on a single income. And that was the very first time that I realized that having one source of income was never a good idea, that I should always have another source of income. And that's actually around the time, actually, I think it was late 2008, early 2009, when I joined my first MLM, which happened to be Pampered Chef. And I absolutely loved my time in Pampered Chef, because I'm a Taurus that loves to cook and I'm a foodie. I love to make food. I love to be in the creation energy of food. And so it just was really fun to me to go cook for people and give people tips on how to cook. And I absolutely loved it. But that was my first kind of inclination of multiple sources were needed. And so I don't care what it is that you do and how solid you think your career is or your business is, you should have multiple ways that you are bringing in money. And these days, affiliate income is quite easy to have as a second source of income. Also looking at your priorities around money. What are your priorities around money? Are you looking to save money? Are you looking to buy something, and putting some things in place to help you so that you can budget better, right? There is a girl I follow on, I shouldn't say a girl, she's a woman I follow on Instagram, and I can't think of her name right now, but she does what she's coined shelf timber. I think she's been doing it for like 10 years, but it's this idea of only spending about $50 a week on groceries and using everything that you have in your pantry, in your freezer, right? I have so much I'm constantly, my mom taught me to have a well-stocked pantry. And so I always have a well-stocked pantry where I can pull things out and make things from scratch. I just get lazy and would rather go to the store and buy something. And so this is the reminder for me, right, to come back to that idea and look at, like, what do I have in my kitchen? What do I have in my pantry that I can already use? Get creative, right? Creative with the resources that I already have. And not that I'm limiting my money because I don't have it, but actually taking the money that I'm saving and applying it somewhere else, applying it to investments, applying it to debt, right? And cutting that down instead of just continuing on in that pattern. Jordan is her first name, and Jordan Page, that's her name. I was like, couldn't think of it. But you can look up the hashtag shelf timber over on Instagram, and you can see her posts. The other thing that I would say, so from the collective energy, we're going to see this in our collective energy around the economic systems, digital currency, working from home. That type of idea is going to get reevaluated as a collective over this period of time. So we might see some changes in that from people working from home. We might see an influx of that, or we might see that start to move away. This is where Uranus is here to kind of shake things up for us, just as it did in 2020, for us to see, like, oh, there's this possibility of being able to work from home. So I invite you, my friend, as you're moving through this particular transit, this particular retrograde, to just notice, what has happened in this past year for you? What are you wanting to integrate? What are you wanting new changes to be as it relates to your finances, to your money, to your physical possessions, the material world, and how you're interacting with it, and then also your own value and what you value. It's a good time to look at your core values and reevaluate what that is for you. All right, let's go back and talk about the sun in Virgo, because the sun does move into Virgo right here on the 7th, no, 16th. There we go. Right here on the 16th. Sun moving into Virgo. Let me share my screen again for you. Okay, so when the sun moves into Virgo here, you're going to see right here on the 16th. We talked about all of these aspects, these transits already happening, but the sun in Virgo, and it'll be moving through this part right through here. You will see the sun move through here. And Virgo it's an earth sign, and it's the energy of, and I've kind of been talking about this already, is perfecting. So in Leo, where our sun is right now, this is all that creative energy, right? Leo actually rules over our house of creation. So there's lots of creative energy in Leo. When it gets into Virgo, it's like, okay, we've gotten all these great ideas. We've been out there. We've been very visible. We've been heard, right? And now it's time to take that information and put some structure around it, put a system around it, put a process around it, get it organized and perfect it. So we've got this really good idea here, and now let's make it even better. Let's really, like, because it needs, right? If you even think of your own creative ability, you have this idea, you start to work on it. I know one of my clients is an artist, and she'll start with this vision of what it is that she wants, and then she gets into the creation of it, and then it becomes something even greater, and it's almost as if she's perfecting the vision of what she had. And sometimes she wouldn't have known that. It's kind of that really great idea of the importance of taking action, because you really don't know what's going to come up until you start taking action. Like, you have that vision, you start creating that thing, and now you get even more information as you start taking action. And that's what Virgo is. It's ruled by Mercury, so there is more of a mental energy here, and there's a lot of, because of that idea of trying to perfect things, there could be an overwhelming feeling of anxiousness. So if you tend to get anxious, this is most likely because we are thinking about the future. We're thinking about how this needs to be perfect. And so I'm going to invite you, my friend, that nothing is perfect, right? We are all in creation. We are all creative energy, and we can create from. And so I want you to keep that in mind as we move through Virgo season. We will have our Virgo guidebook coming out at the start of Virgo season, so look out for that. You can still get the Leo guidebook that has all the information about the Leo energy, the Leo zodiac sign, as well as the transits that are happening for the next couple of weeks. Plus, we've got weekly journal prompts in there to help you get some more information and more self awareness around the Leo energy for you. And we've got two really great rituals that you can still do during this season before we move into fall. I'd highly recommend you checking those out. And I believe there's some crystals in there that you can work with as well. All right, my friend, this has been your Sidereal Astrology forecast for the month of September 2024. This was our overview. Be sure to subscribe to the channel or follow the podcast for our weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast. All right, my friend, enjoy your month. I wish you the best, and I'll see you next time. Bye.